Now, your pattern maker has finished your entire collection of, let's say, 8 unique styles. Let's say you're doing a streetwear collection and you have 2 hoodies, 2 joggers, 2 t-shirts. How many is that? 2, 4, 6? Let's say 6 styles. Okay. Your pattern maker has now made 6 different patterns, 6 different items. So he's made 2 hoodies, 2 joggers, and 2 t-shirts. When the patterns are completed, they get printed out on a roll. The roll usually comes in about 38-inch or even upwards of 60-inch paper. The plotters go up to about 60, 70 inches, but it gets plotted out and printed out. All the parts and pieces of the garment gets individually printed on a plot that then gets sent to a sample sewer. Your pattern maker should be able to communicate effectively with your sample sewers, because the sample sewer will look at the pattern and needs to interpret what is on paper so that they can cut and sew the samples. So a relationship between the pattern maker and the sample sewers is very important. Now, the sample sewer will take the patterns that were made, roll it out on a long table, see all the parts and pieces of the garment, and determine what fabric belongs to which part and piece. For the most part, it'll be the same fabric. If you're making this particular jacket, it's all one fabric, so they will roll out the paper and roll out the fabric. The fabric actually goes first. The fabric goes on the table, rolled out, and the pattern gets laid on top of the fabric. Oftentimes, depending on the software that's used, most software optimizes the pattern placement on the paper to minimize waste. We don't want to waste fabric. We want to minimize as much waste as possible, and most software allows for that to happen. Those that still make patterns by hand have to now cut the pattern pieces and lay them appropriately on the fabric so that visually they can hopefully try to minimize waste, but certainly they'll be able to cut and sew from the pattern and the fabric. So see if you can get a visual of that. You've got the fabric laid out on a big cutting table, and you got the pattern laid on top of the fabric, and then the cutter will come in and cut all the parts and pieces of that pattern onto the fabric, such that now the sample sewer can take all those pieces and line them up. Within the pattern, there are what are called notches. I might be getting way in the weeds on this, but it's good for you to know these things. In the pattern, there are what's called notches. The notches need to be lined up between the pattern parts, so that the sewer knows what gets lined up with which part and sewn together. The sample sewers will have a clear knowledge of how that works. The pattern maker will deliver the pattern with the notches to the sample sewer. The sample sewer will then have either the material cut or will cut it themselves. Sewers are not cutters. They're 2 different things. Some people just do cutting. Some people just do sewing. They very rarely do both. On rare occasions. I mean, it does happen, but not as often as I would like, to be honest with you. So when the pattern and the fabric is delivered, it's cut. The cut pieces are now delivered to the sample sewer. The sample sewer assembles all the cut pieces together to make you your sample. You have now made an actual live sample of a product that first initially was either A, in your mind as a result of a fresh fashion design, or as a result of product development. But whatever the case might be, the technical design flat was delivered to the pattern maker with the specs and the fabric callouts. The pattern maker made all the parts and pieces with all of the information provided the patterns to the sample sewer, to which the sample sewer now cut and sew, or had it cut and then sewn those pieces together to make you your first sample.